Good morning. I'm very pleased to be here this morning, and I'm assuming this will help me figure out what I'm going to do with the slides. So thank you. Let me talk a little bit about my new gig. I'm the executive director of an organization called the National Institute on Retirement Security. And NIRS, as we call it, is a nonprofit, nonpartisan research organization founded about 5 years ago. And part of our role at NIRS is to bring credible research to educate the public regarding retirement security, with a particular focus on pensions, both in the public and private sector. We issue reports, primers, commentary. We know that there's good news in pensions, and in fact, just a few weeks ago, we released a report about the economic impact of the pension payments that are going to retired firefighters, police, teachers, corporate employees, federal government employees, all across this country. And all told, when you take those retirees spending their money in our communities, having breakfast at McDonald's with their former colleagues, having dinner with their friends and family, helping their kids, that generated in 2009, a year when this country needed an economic boost, that generated over $1 trillion in economic activity. It helped keep 6.5 million jobs in our economy. This is clearly where the public sector pension meets private enterprise and encourages a lot of businesses to be created, to stay in business, and to expand, because the retirees are assured that they will have an income day in and day out. NIRS does a lot of different research reports, and one of the things that we're trying to say publicly is that pensions get retirement right. They're cost-effective. They save public assistance. They ensure that people are economically sufficient. And what people say about public-private sector defined benefit plans being the way the public sector plans aren't necessarily true models. And I just told you about how they create jobs in the economy. What I want to do as I look is talk a little bit about what is the retirement security landscape as we look across the country, and then talk a little bit about how we demystify some of the myths that are out there on pensions with facts. First of all, how many people here have heard that, government jobs are just growing like wildfire? And that, there's more and more, the public sector has just gotten bigger and bigger. Just a show of hands, how many people have heard that? Well, the reality of that is not true. When you look at the economy and you look at the job situation, which is on the side of this slide that's sort of the white, not the colored side, what you really see is what's happened in the economy over the last 30 plus years is that jobs, middle income jobs in the public sector, private sector, have been replaced by low income jobs in the private sector, and that government employment has stayed relatively stable almost over that whole time. In fact, declining from just a little bit over 20% to about 17 or 18% today. So it's not that the public sector has grown inordinately compared to the rest of the economy. And then what's happening in the private sector when it comes to a pension plan is this second chart on this slide, which basically has that blue line are where people were covered under a pension plan, a traditional DB plan, back in 1978. And what you've seen is a decline in the private sector, matched with a corresponding increase with 401k type retirement plans, sort of a big intersection about 1984 when things were in the middle, and then this spurt in both directions, especially as 401k plans became the marketplace darling. But where does that leave Americans with regard to retirement security? The Center for Retirement Research in Boston publishes a national retirement risk survey. And what it clearly shows is as this trend towards 401k plans and away from defined benefit plans has occurred, what we've seen is more and more households in this country at risk of falling short of pre-retirement standards in living. Additionally, as we think about Social Security, and a lot of individuals, when they think of Social Security, they think of that as the base and the floor, and that's absolutely true. But I wanted to show you a chart of, the replacement income from Social Security. It's designed to be a progressive benefit, so those people with low incomes probably rely almost entirely on Social Security, where those at the higher income levels, the maximum earnings rate in 2011, which was $106,000, those individuals only get about 25% of their employment salary replaced. But again, they get a better benefit in real dollars over that same time. We still have changes coming down the pike in Social Security, with retirement ages being on a rise from 65 to 67. And currently, the normal retirement age is 67. In this economy, so many people retired early at 62. If they lost a job at that age, they were having a hard time finding it. And what that means is that everybody gets a benefit cut when we raise the retirement age. So these are things to be important and understand in terms of the rest of the public. One of the other very scary trends in the private sector has been freezing of defined benefit plans. And the one place in the economy with the largest concentration of defined benefit plans going into this new century was the large corporations, those that were the Fortune 1000. About 2/3 of them had DB plans in 2004. There's been structural changes, and new companies joining that are less likely to have a defined benefit plan, but still, almost 600 of them have plans. But on the other side of the coin, we've also seen more and more of those plans be frozen. And I think it's particularly a concern, and this was a concern of my former boss, Congressman Pomeroy, when the Pension Protection Act was being passed, and corporations said, well, if this law passes, we'll freeze our defined benefit plan. Congress chose to ignore that, but in reality, that's exactly what's happened. Those Fortune 1000 companies, where only 45 companies had one defined benefit plan that was frozen, today, 208 have at least one plan. Luckily for those people who are in union plans at those companies, it's not the union plan that's the frozen plan. It's the plan that covers the non-union employees. And so how have our 401k plans done for us as a nation? This chart is a little bit hard probably to see a little bit, but what I really want you to focus in on is the dollars out there in 401k plans are not exceedingly large. And in fact, if you look at the dollars on the median account value, that's the value which half of the people have more, half of the people have less. In 2007, for those people within 10 years of retirement, the median was $100,000. Now, if you're going to retire at age 65, it's very likely you're going to have at least 20-year life expectancy. Trying to make that $100,000 last for 20 years doesn't really leave you with a lot of income in any one given year. So I also want you to take a look at, let's just look at those same households from a different point of view. Look at it in terms of how much do they have as a percent of their pay put aside. And if you look at this, 6 out of 10 households with near retirement ages have less than 1 times their salary put away in a 401k plan or an IRA. Only 11% have 4 or more times. And even that's not really sufficient. When you think about it, that might get you 20% replacement of your pre-retirement salary for the rest of your expected lifetime. So we really are in a place where 401k plans have made challenges. The other important challenge about 401k plans is that the last years often matter the most. 401k plans, you often hear this about defined benefit plans. Oh, they're backloaded with big benefits at the end of someone's career. Well, 401k plans are backloaded with investment risk. And, if you make an assumption that, over somebody's career, they're going to return about an average of 8% per year, their salary is going to go up by 3%, they're going to put money into this plan. But let's say in the last 10 years, instead of the return that they anticipated, they only get a 2% return. Well, that puts them at retirement age with 1/3 less than what they would have anticipated. So it is no wonder that when we surveyed Americans last year, they told us they were anxious about retirement, they have low expectations about retirement, they think the system's under stress, and yet, you want to know something else? They also believe that pensions relieve anxiety and are reliable. Let me just quickly talk about a few things. 84% said the current economic conditions hurt in retirement, and 55% of those felt very, very strongly about that. In addition to that, 72% believe they can't make up the financial losses before they retire that they've seen in their accounts. This is the picture of retirement for many households. It's no longer going to be that couple sitting on a beach waiting for someone to bring them a pina colada or a glass of wine. They're going to be sitting around the kitchen table, and this is what retirees actually told us when we said, what's retirement security to you? Surviving, living comfortably, paying my bills, maintaining my pre-retirement lifestyle. Only 11% spoke about hobbies or travel. We're really adjusting our expectations for retirement. Now let me talk a little bit about getting the facts out about good pensions. And I want to recruit you all to be part of my Mythbuster team. There's a lot of myths out there about retirement, and I'm sure all of you have heard these. One of them is, nobody wants a pension plan. Well, that same survey that we did of the American public, 81% of Americans, 8 out of 10, said that America needs pensions for independence and self-reliant. A key part of the American dream is not just to leave a better future for your kids. Part of that better future for your kids is that you're not living with them. It is for me. Now, I remember my grandmother and my great-grandmother both lived with their daughters for many years in their retirement, and we may go back to that. And so just as you finally got your 40-year-old kids out the door, and they haven't come back again, you may be looking to move in with them. So, you may want to make sure you're kind to them as they leave. The other thing that we often hear is we also hear about benefits. We've heard about this $100,000 club. But in reality, the benefits being paid across the board to retirees are much more modest. And if everyone was getting $100,000 of pension benefits, the average benefit wouldn't be about $1,800 for the last 4 to 5 years. So again, these are modest benefits. They're benefits that you, as firefighters and other first responders, pay for. You pay for this with contributions from your salary over your career. The employers contribute as well. What I think is very interesting about the slide I have here is that your contributions are those dark lines each year. And those have steadily gone up as your wages have gone up. Yet the states and the employers at times have taken contribution holidays when plans were well funded. And some of those holidays are what we're also paying for today. And also, it's important as people talk about, well, pension cost in the last 10 years went up so significantly. Part of that is because the 5 years before the last 10, the contributions went down. So the endpoint sensitivity of when people look at the numbers is real important. NERS did an issue brief called Who Killed Private Sector DB Pensions? And what we found was that it wasn't, this thing, well, the private sector doesn't have DB pensions, so they're not good plans. That's not true. Private sector plans have died because Congress has overregulated them. They made them put their funding under very stringent rules, the type of rules that some people would like to apply to public sector plans. And so public sector plans that have more flexibility have been able to manage the volatility. This slide just shows you what's going on in the private sector, under the red, with the increases in the amount of pension contributions that had to go into those plans. The public sector has had challenges too, but nowhere near the same type of volatility that the corporate sector has. And corporations don't like this type of volatility. That's why they're leaving DB plans. And it's a big difference. It's important to understand. We also know, unlike 401k plans, the investment returns in defined benefit plans have historically, under many studies, proven to be superior. And in fact, just a 1% difference in the investment rate of return means there's 25% more dollars there over a 30-year period, and even more when you go out 40 and 50 years that really are the pension relationship. When you combine that with the fact that pensions can remain forever young and be always actively invested and not have to change to less riskier investments, and the fact that pension plans provide longevity protection so you don't have to save more money to make sure you never run out of dollars, defined benefit plans will provide the same level of benefits at 46% less than the cost that it would cost to provide benefits in a defined contribution plan. NERS has done some research as well. We often hear that, oh, these plans aren't sustainable. It's irresponsible sometimes for any government to offer a plan. And that's totally untrue. And NERS looked at 6, and it's not that there's just 6. We were doing this as a case study. But we looked at pension plans from red states and blue states, from small states and large states, from Delaware and Texas, from Idaho and New York. And we looked at plans that were well-funded. In fact, we even had well-funded plans in Illinois. What we found was that they are sustainable, and that better funding came from funding policies that said we have to make our contributions, plan design, solid economic assumptions. And we know that these are sustainable models. We can give a model in almost every type of legislative circumstance that someone would like to have some protection. There are models that show that DB plans can work and give some of the protections that legislators might seek for taxpayers. We also did another study that looked at states where people had a choice between a defined benefit and a defined contribution plan. The overwhelming choice was to go in the public sector to choose the defined benefit plan. Even when the default option was a hybrid plan, the defined benefit plan won the day when it came to employee choices. So these are plans that you as employees value. They're plans that deliver a great deal of value to the states. And I think the other important thing is all across the country, and sometimes this is a challenge, it's why you need to be here as part of the myth-busting team for defined benefit plans, but public pensions are facing up to the financial crisis, and they are taking action. They're not waiting another 10 or 15 years. Funding's being restored, people are making compromises, and we're getting on with well-funded plans. And with that, I will leave it open. I don't know if you want me to take some questions or not, but I'd be happy to.